And welcome back to Around the Waves on KCOU 88.1 FM Columbia, the student voice of your Missouri Tigers. I'm your host, Luca Vitale, alongside me, Ryan Waelterman, Ben Schmidt. Let's get to the NFL here. The 2022 NFL trade deadline has come and gone after several big names were moved in the lead up to the deadline, like Christian McCaffrey. Chaos definitely ensued on Tuesday in what turned out to be one of the more active deadline days in recent memory. I think there was like 10 deals or something on that trade.
It was awesome.
I gotta admit, I was actually shocked by some of these trades, which Ryan will talk about one of them. But Ben, I'll start with you. Which trade was the most? What do you actually just talk about a trade that you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm going to talk about here, and
I do.
I don't talk about the Vikings a lot on this show. I mean, it comes up in not like Ryan over here wants to.
Yeah,
talk
you don't
about
talk about Kirk Cousins.
Who wants to talk about the Packers every single week? I keep the Vikings
every single week
on the back burner. I would rather no one have to talk about the Vikings because then
not
I don't
even
have
Kirk
to.
Cousins.
See, like I kind of like that. I like that he's under the radar, and I don't have to hear all the Monday Night Football, and whatever record, all that stuff. But this was a very impactful trade for a team that I think sees a window to compete just because, and I'm not saying that this team's going to beat Philly or even beat San Francisco. They may not even beat Dallas, but it's a team that sees a window in a weaker NFC. Yeah, I know you're low on Dallas. I think this is a team that sees a weaker NFC and has an opportunity to go and get it and put themselves in a position to compete. The Vikings getting T.J. Hockenson, I thought was an excellent move, came completely out of left field. The Lions in this deal got a 23 second rounder and a 24 third rounder. Meanwhile, the Vikings in return get up a 23 fourth, a conditional fourth in 2024, and then T.J. Hockenson as well. So basically in 2023, to move back from the second to the fourth round pick from Minnesota, if the Lions won as early because they stink and the Vikings won as late because they play good, the Vikings are essentially in this year's draft moving back 40 picks to get T.J. Hockenson, which I think is an excellent move. This could help the Lions long term. I'm not saying that the Vikings fleece the Lions here by any means because a second-round pick is great draft capital, but T.J. Hockenson is such a great move for the Vikings, and especially this is most important because Irv Schmidt, the Vikings starting tight end, is out 8 to 10 weeks in an injury he suffered on Sunday against Arizona, ankle injury, and the only other tight end that the Vikings really have incorporated is Johnny Munt, who's essentially more of an extra blocker than he is a tight end. So Hockenson, you bring him into the Vikings, a Midwest kid, went to Iowa. I shouldn't say kid because he's older than I am, but went to Iowa and loves the Midwest. So you bring in a guy that on the season has 395 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I thought this is what really is going to make the most impact with Minnesota and why it fills such a huge need. When you look at T.J. Hockenson, he gets 15.2 yards per catch, which is the best among any tight ends. And then you turn to what the Vikings were getting, you cut that number in half. They were last in the NFL with 7.3 a game. So for Kirk Cousins, especially when you look at him, he has struggled a little bit on third down to add an extra weapon. And, Irv Smith, I liked him a lot, but he's not the player that T.J. Hockenson is when they're both on the field. T.J. Hockenson gives just an added element, especially in those key passing downs on third down when they get to the red zone, a guy that's super athletic. And if you throw to him short of the sticks on third down, he has the athletic ability to go and pick up those extra yards because he's also very good after the catch. And another reason here why this is impactful, just because it's one more person that defense have to take an eye on that takes away from a number one receiver like Justin Jefferson. We've seen when Jefferson's been taken out of game plans, it's because teams play bracket coverage and just scheme him out of the game plan with extra defenders. Well, no one was devoting a lot of attention to Irv Smith because he wasn't doing a whole lot. T.J. Hockenson is one of the better tight ends in the league, and you have to devote coverage to him, which just does one less eye to guard on Jefferson. If you still want to double Jefferson, then you're basically saying, we'll put Adam Thielen in one-on-one coverage, and you're probably going to lose that battle more times than you're going to win it. So I think all around, one, you get an upgraded tight end, but it opens up this offense even more. It certainly fills a need for the Vikings, and they didn't give up premium draft capital. I think you do it. Oh, and T.J. Hockenson is under contract next year too, so it's not a guy that you're going to lose walking away in free agency this year. So I thought this was an incredibly underrated deal, one that I did not see coming, and just as a fan, it has me ecstatic. All I hope is that stays on the field and they can incorporate him. Also, too, this one around Twitter yesterday. If you look, T.J. Hockenson is the spitting image just of the Vikings logo. If you just take the Vikings logo with the long hair and the beard and everything, that's T.J. Hockenson.
I can actually see
someone,
that. Yeah,
someone
I see that now.
Took like the top of the Vikings logo and photoshopped it onto Hockenson's head. Like he is the Vikings logo. So I thought he
Too bad we're not on TV because this would be a great graphic.
This would be this would be a BAM right behind me if I was making it right now.
It would be.
So this is I was excited. I'll turn to you guys now, but I thought that was an incredibly impactful deal.
Well, listen, I think the Vikings got really good this trade deadline. I did not see that. That came out of left field, like you said, Ben. And the Minnesota Vikings, I think people write them off, or I wouldn't say write them off, but underrate them simply because we're so used to seeing Philadelphia. We see Dallas, we see the Giants, add the 49ers in there, and the Vikings are basically ignored, and that's simply because, well, nobody trusts Kirk Cousins in the postseason, and I don't blame them for that because Kirk Cousins makes his mistakes here and there, but I don't know about that this year. I think Kirk Cousins has proven something that we have not seen before. So I'm actually going to put some faith in the Vikings. You got Dalvin Cook, you got Justin Jefferson, you got Adam Thielen already, you got KJ Osborne, and now you add Hawkinson to this team. And the Minnesota secondary has actually gotten better as the season progressed. So I like this move a lot. I think the Vikings are a team you do not want to be reckoning with when postseason comes. However, I'm going to talk about my team, the Bears, and was I shocked when Roquan Smith was shipped out of town? I was not. The reason I say that is because the dude demanded a trade in August. So I don't understand how that was shocking. I don't know why Roquan Smith came on when he went to his press conference, his very first one with Baltimore, and says, I was taken away by it. He basically said that. I was not shocked by it at all. He shouldn't have been even blindsided because when you talk about being paid the highest linebacker in the National Football League, does Roquan deserve to be paid to be the highest paid linebacker in the league? I don't think he does. But he should be up there with a Fred Warner or a Shaquille Leonard, definitely. But not the highest. And he should not be resetting the mark in any means, by the way.
Correct.
So, Baltimore's defense. Now we're talking about a team now that is about to get two of their pass rushers back. Is it Tyus? Is that how you say Tyus Bowser?
Yeah, and then David Ojabo.
Thank you. So those are the two pass rushers that are returning. You got Marlon Humphrey. You got Jason Pierre-Paul, who they just added. You also got Jason Peters, or Marcus Peters? Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Peters.
Too many Peters. and then you got Patrick Queen on that linebacker position as well. They got a decent secondary that's improved throughout the season. And now you add a dude in Roquan Smith who has 83 tackles, which is the NFL leader in tackles. He has 2.5 sacks on the season and 2 interceptions. So Roquan Smith, I'm not saying this dude is a scrub by any means, but how Bears fans are getting upset about this trade is beyond me. The Bears were never going to pay him. That's number one. Number two, he's too up and down in Matt Eberflus's defense. He doesn't fit the scheme, in my opinion. That's not on him. That's simply just the scheme in what they had. And obviously, people saw him as the cornerstone for this next group. He simply wasn't, and we'll move on from that. And plus, the Bears were 30th against the run with Roquan Smith and Quinn in this defense. So it's not like it's going to be a difference. So I will say that Eric DeCosta for the Ravens, if they do not sign this dude to a contract, because they got to pay Lamar as well, then they are going to lose this trade for sure. Because unless they win the Super Bowl, but I don't see that because now you got to worry about the Miami Dolphins, which we'll talk about that in very shortly with Ryan. But this team is a few defensive stops away, from being 8-0. 8-0. So this team is not like some team that stinks, okay? This is a very good team. So if they are going to play better in defense, which I expect this defense now, especially with the edge, getting these players back, and against the run to improve even more, and that's going to give Lamar Jackson even more pressure to perform better on offense. And that's going to determine even more with his new deal. Now, I'll talk about Chase Claypool. I was not very happy that the Bears gave up their own second for Chase Claypool. If it was the Ravens, sure, because it's basically a third-round pick. The Ravens are going to make the playoffs. I do not think Cincinnati is better than the Ravens. I don't think they're better. Cincinnati was manhandled by the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett basically could have played himself out. He could have basically played by himself. And Denzel Ward wasn't in that secondary on Monday Night Football. I was shocked that how bad they were. Jamar Chase was out, granted, but you still had T. Higgins, you still had Tyler Boyd, you still had some weapons out there, you still had Joe Mixon able to run the football, but their offensive line is trash. They invested so much cash in that over the offseason, it looks worse. So I was pretty disappointed. I've been very disappointed, by the way, with the Cincinnati Bengals because they were supposed to improve, and they actually found a way to get worse. But Chase Claypool, I understand the criticism this dude receives simply because he drops the ball, he trips over his own legs, he can't run routes. I understand that. We have seen that in Pittsburgh. However, when you play with a washed-up Ben Roethlisberger who cannot throw the football down the field, when you play with Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, you are most likely not going to look that great. That's okay, though. And also, don't get me started with Matt Canada. Don't get me started with this man, because this dude cannot call an offense. Okay, he cannot. Najee Harris is running into a wall when he's running plays. That's no hero there, though. I think Chase Claypool, this is a great opportunity for him to sort of resurrect his career in Chicago. Justin Fields gets a new weapon. And by the way, Ben, I got to admit, he has looked good the last 2 weeks. He's not shocking the world what he's doing, but he is looking better each and every week, and getting a weapon for Justin Fields outside of Darnell Mooney, this could definitely help the Bears moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. On Fields, real quick, just because I've been as high as him, higher on him than more people have, just because I've been a fan of his at Ohio State. So the continued improvement of him, I thought, has been huge. They are incorporating his best skill set into the game plan, which I think early on in the season with a new coaching staff, they were still figuring it out, and there was some growing pains. Now, if there's continued growth and you add in a guy that can go up and get you one, it's a different skill set than Mooney. I think is a huge difference. Want to talk about the Bears trade that you talked about real quick. From the Bears perspective, a little bit more. Ravens, we already know what they're getting in Roquan. I think the Bears did really well in the return for this Roquan trade. I've kind of learned this week, and I don't know why it took me to this year to realize it, that average NFL fans think that like any average NFL player should be given a first-round pick in return. If it's not that, it's not worth it. So I saw
that's just not how the NFL works.
Yes, correctly.
Though.
I saw on social media there was a fair amount of people that were upset that the Bears didn't get a first-round pick in return for Roquan.
He's not Bradley Chubb.
Exactly, and I think the second-round pick is a good return here for Chicago. If you look at Roquan's stats on the surface, incredible tackler of the football, leading the league in tackles, actually.
Right.
But I think with how athletic the game is moving, it depends on your overall scheme, and you are right. He didn't fit Eberflus's scheme.
He just didn't.
I want my linebackers to be able to tackle. Would you rather him, your linebacker tackle guy, after he's already got 10 yards downfield, or just be able to cover him and prevent that from happening? Roquan was not good in cover, so that's one knock on him. And he's in a contract year, so they're not going to sign him to extension right here mid-season. So those are two knocks against getting more value for Roquan that would get a first-round pick in return, like Bradley Chubb. It's a different skill set because Chubb is just a passer.
Exactly.
But those are two things that knocked Roquan. So to still get a second, which you can find very good production, especially on defense in the second round, I thought was a good return. Bears did well here. There's a clear plan in place. They're building for the future. I'm with you. Probably gave up a little too much for Claypool, but it's still more of a proven commodity than what you would probably get in the second out of receiver. So I thought overall the Bears did well here. And the last couple weeks, this is how you want it. At the front of the end of a rebuild, the Bears doing really well because they're still losing games and they're going to get a higher draft pick, but they look good. The offense looks good and the field is developing. I think this is the best thing that the Bears probably could have asked for the last couple of weeks, and you've got to have
especially
some excitement.
against Dallas.
Yeah,
against a good defense.
Absolutely. You've got to temper your expectations, but I'd be excited if I am in Chicago. It looks like the nucleus of this team for the future is starting to take shape.
All right, Ryan.
Yeah, so you guys talked about your teams. Time for me? No, I'm just kidding. We'll not be talking about the Green Bay Packers. Anyways,
not yet anyway. Later on.
Yeah, not yet. I have it on my sheet, so.
Yeah, we will be actually talking about it later on in the show. But you guys talked about a trade that you thought came out of left field with the T.J. Hockenson trade. I want to talk about one. I just want to talk a little bit about this because I don't think anyone saw this one coming. Well, how about this? Trent Baalke from Jacksonville, the GM, he decided to go out and trade for Calvin Ridley, who is suspended. He will not be able to play the rest of the year. But I really like this trade simply because I think Jacksonville, what they're trying to think is that they're an up-and-coming team. And I do think that they can be. I just think that Trevor Lawrence, he needs another guy. And obviously Calvin Ridley's going to be that other guy because they have Christian Kirk. They still got guys like Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, stuff like that. But no one in the level of Calvin Ridley. So I really do like this. And they really didn't have to give up much. They did have to give up two draft picks. But a lot of people aren't really talking about this one strictly because he's suspended. But next year, I think everyone's going to be talking about this Jags team because Calvin Ridley's going to add so much more to this offense than a lot of people think. I mean, like I said, now he's going to be able to throw to more than just guys named Christian Kirk. So I think that's really good. They were 2-0 to start the season, guys, and then obviously they just fell apart with a 5-game losing streak. But now adding a guy in Calvin Ridley, I think that really helps out Jacksonville. And guys and fans in Duval County should be very happy with this signing because Calvin Ridley is going to be the next big Jaguar, I think. Now, to the actual trade I want to talk about, and newly traded, and how about this, guys? Newly extended as well as, Bradley Chubb has now been extended on a 5-year, $119 million contract extension to Miami, so I think that's really awesome. You guys already talked about he got traded to Miami. Miami gave away a first-round draft pick. I really like this signing, though, because the Dolphins, yes, now they can really compete in the AFC because obviously that offense is electric and they had a really good offense. They were just missing that one passer, that one big rushing passer, and now they got it with Bradley Chubb. He's going to wreak havoc for this Dolphins team. This Dolphins team can really make some noise in the AFC now. They still got guys like as in Christian Wilkins, they got guys in Emmanuel Agba. This defense just got really good. I wouldn't necessarily say top 10, but potentially could be because I think that's how good Bradley Chubb will make this team. But make no doubt about it, especially Xavier Howard, stuff like that. Make no doubt about it, this defense is going to wreak havoc. They're going to be a lot better now on both sides of the ball. I mean, you still have Tua, you still have Tyreek doing their thing with Jalen Waddle. And guys, I love the Jalen Waddle touchdown celebration. Just when he waddles, that's electric.
You know, the thing with the Miami Dolphins, I think it's time to stop with the Tua narratives because this dude can play.
Yes, he can.
He is that good. I think Tua and the Miami Dolphins, they can definitely upset somebody's.
They're the only
run.
team that beat the Bills so far, too.
Yeah, and even though they were completely outgained and all that, but the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa, they're a completely different team. They're so much better, too.
Yes.
And you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to worry about. If you're a defense, you are very, very worried. They just need and they got a running game now too. They got some. They added to their running game in
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson, thank you. Which I think it's better. It's not elite, but it's better.
It's.
So.
I mean, it's a scheme ad just because you look at the coach Mike McDaniel. Already had Mostert, same guy that was leading the pack when San Francisco went to the Super Bowl.
Now,
and now you added
49ers.
Jeff Wilson. So it's not like bruising running backs. You're going to turn and give to 22 carries a game plus. Maybe Wilson could get some more carries. He's a little bit more physical back than Mostert, but it fits their scheme and what they're trying to do.